All right, here we go. Another Friday edition of the conversation series. My guest today is Pedro Smith. Pedro, how are you?
Good, man. Excited for some football tonight and can't wait to watch these young guys play.
As a guy that creates content, I'm sure you were excited about the idea of putting up more points and doing some winning and maybe a little creativity. It makes this thing we do a little bit easier than when they're losing.
Oh yeah, for sure. When they're winning, whatever video you post, it can be whatever. People are gonna watch it, people are gonna comment nice things, but then when they're losing and we have to say, some people don't, but the majority of us keep it real. When they're losing, we'll keep it real. But some people don't like that, and then you'll get the comments like, "Come on, you got to be positive." It's like, this has nothing to do with the actual season, but like I got so much hate for not liking the Emmanuel Forbes pick. Like when it happened live, I was not happy with the pick because I wanted Christian Gonzalez. And like the thing is, I right away I said, I know who Emmanuel Forbes is. I know how many interceptions, how many pick sixes he had, but I still wanted Gonzalez over him. But people, kept on hating. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Emmanuel Forbes has been amazing this offseason, but we'll see what happens in the regular season. But like you said, when they're winning, it's much easier for us to make content, and everyone's a lot more positive, which I love.
How long have you had the YouTube channel now?
I've had it for
How long have you really been plugging at it?
so I would say I started posting Commanders content before the 2019 season, which I believe that was the Haskins rookie year. That's when I
Correct, you're right.
started posting it. And then I really what really kickstarted it was the end of the season that year, and Rivera got hired. Once Rivera got hired, that's when things started to get started taking off. And then once COVID happened, that even took it further because I didn't have school and just had more time to post the content. So 2020 was definitely the year that started everything, I would say. And then yeah, ever since then, it's been every day basically.
That makes for a pretty good segue. I'm curious, like what you thought of Rivera at the time when they hired him, if you can remember back to that hiring. And do you still feel the same way? Have you come around on him if you weren't high on him? Are you lower on him if you were higher on him? Like where were you then and now?
Yeah, so I was definitely higher on him then than I am now. I think most people should be just because of it's been 3 years we haven't had a winning record. To be fair, the roster when he got here wasn't great and stuff and everything he's gone through. I think in general I've changed as a fan over the last few years, like from being, partly because, 3, 4 years ago I was what, 15, 16, and now I'm 19, 20. So it's like every year you develop a little bit more as a fan, and like back then I would be excited over everything they did, and now it's more like I look at it a little bit differently. Part of it's because I got an older, part of it is because of the content. But I liked Rivera a lot when we hired him, and the first year really loved him, and then going into that, what was it, 2021 season, that's when it started to get a little bit sour, some of the moves he was making in the off season. And I still don't hate him. Like, if they were to keep him, would I like it? No, but I wouldn't absolutely hate it. But I hope at the very minimum he's done with his front office, titles or whatever. Like if he wants to be the head coach, that's fine. But I think they should bring in someone else to be the, president of football operations, or, a Joe Shane or whatever from the Giants, someone like that, because I think we need someone like that. And the coach centric approach can work, but you got to have an elite coach. And Ron Rivera is not an elite coach. He's good. He's good sometimes, but like the stat everyone, points out, what is it, 2 or 3 winning seasons in 11 years, something crazy like that. And
Yeah.
again, he's inherited some bad teams, and, he has good QB play here. If you think about it, part of that is his own fault. Part of it, again, is what he inherited. So I don't think he's a great coach. I would probably put him at like below average, but everything he's had to go through, I really, really respect him as a person, because again, just every single thing he's gone through. Like there's probably not many coaches in the history of the NFL that have gone through more than he's gone through in the last few years. So If they keep him, it's fine. If not, I'll still be happy because I think we could use another coach. But yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I'm with you as far as the coach centric goes. I think it's all but an impossible situation to put yourself in. That's why you see there's only one, the guy up in New England that does it. Like even in Kansas City with Andy Reid, who I think most people feel has like a huge role in what happens there throughout the organization, made sure that there was a president of football ops and a general manager to do all those things. Now, I also know, I don't know if you saw the tweet I put out a couple, maybe it was last week. If you go to the Commander's website last year on the football, like front office stuff, he was still the head of VP of football ops or whatever it was. When you go there now, he's not listed with the front office personnel anymore, and he's just the head coach. And supposedly he said he'd prefer it that way. Maybe he just didn't feel like having it set up that way when he got here was something he wanted to have to deal with. So yeah, I think they've changed that, and it's I'm sure it's better for him. Problem for him is whether the two GMs that he hired are any good.
Yeah, I saw your tweet, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's good because again, he has made some good moves. Like honestly, he has made some good moves, but I think he's been like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think he's been a little bit stubborn at certain positions, like linebacker. Like clearly, we should have made some moves over the last few years. Like even if you think the starters are fine, which I think is questionable, you played John Bostic and David Mayo last year significant snaps, and those guys should not be playing significant snaps.
Sure.
They should not be. So, yes, I understand the people that are defending him about like, okay, or defending this linebacking core. Like, we don't need another starter. We got Jamin Davis and Cody Barton. That's fair. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. But last year, we had games where David Mayo was the number one linebacker, or he was the number two linebacker for at least 4 or 5 games, and Bostic played snaps. I'm sorry, Bostic should not be playing snaps. You look at the linebacking core right now. You got Cody Barton. We'll see. He's a respectable linebacker, I think, at least in this league. Has a chance to be good. Jamin Davis, he's all right. I don't know if he's still has that opportunity to be a special linebacker, but he's okay. Has a chance to be good. And then after that, you got question marks. Khaleke Hudson has heard some good things. We'll see what happens, but he's like probably a 4th linebacker or 5th linebacker on most teams. And then you got David Mayo, who is a special teams guy. He should not be playing significant snaps for you. So it's been the same thing for every single offseason that Rivera's been here, and it has not been addressed besides one move, and that was Jamin Davis. Like it's been what? 2020, 2021, 24, 4 drafts for Rivera, and he's drafted what? 2 linebackers, Khaleke Hudson and Jamin Davis, because Andre Jones is a DN. So that's something I think he's been stubborn on. The O-line, he's made some questionable moves. And like I think he should right now sign another guard. Like you got your O-line depth is not good at all. You look at the starters aren't great, but you look at the O-line depth. Trent Scott is your backup right. I mean, I guess Lucas is your backup left/right tackle, but after him, it's Trent Scott, who pretty sure he played in the XFL. After that, you got Aaron Montero is one of your backup guards. Chris Paul /
Daniels and guys like that. Yeah,
exactly. One of those guys, Chris Paul or Sadiq Charles. One of those guys is starting, and maybe they'll be good, but that's a 7th round pick who's played in one game, who's active one game in his whole career, and then Sadiq Charles, who honestly, like he's been injured all of his career, and honestly, when he's played, like he hasn't been that special. Like I know a lot of people are hyped about him, but like he hasn't played well. So I think those are some things where like Rivera's been a little bit too like stubborn with. Like you just gotta go ahead, admit you were wrong, and bring in someone else. And then some other things like the Landon Collins things, like fans were clamoring, I feel like, for Landon to play linebacker for so long. And then they finally put him in, but it was like 4 or 5 weeks too late because he was, stinking it up the first few weeks. So I don't know. I think Rivera, again, he has made some good moves. I don't know how much of it's him versus some of the scouts he has, but he's made some good moves, but also some questionable ones at the same time, which everyone's going to do.
It'll be interesting about the linebacker spot because while I agree with you, this feels like one of those conversations as fans we have constantly and feels so important. And we're always like, well, what the hell are we going to do with linebacker? We can't be rolling David Mayo out there. But yet, like, they keep at the same time yelling at us, we don't care. We don't find it important. And to their credit, I've said this on the last couple of shows, I've been on the Jack Del Rio apology tour, as I say, I thought you were
Same.
old and football had passed you by. And they're kind of leading the movement in this 5-1-5-2-6 or 4-1-6 kind of defense that the league is slowly moving to. So I really don't think we're going to see, when I talked to Aaron Schatz on Wednesday about the analytics and how teams are using, he said he would imagine that the Commanders are in some sort of dime, like nickel is base, and then even for them, dime will be the second defense, that the amount that they'll use. So again, to your point, if somebody gets hurt, they're in trouble on linebacker, right? Because they have no depth. Just like, God help if something happens to Charles Leno, because I have no idea what's supposed to happen to there. I totally agree with you there. I don't know that they need the linebackers, but boy, the depth hasn't been good, particularly. And then, of course, the other thing we've been talking about on this show recently is that draft with Jamin Davis probably is his biggest mistake. There were moves to be made. Christian Darrisaw was still on the board at that point. They could have taken him, right? Justin Fields was an extra first pick away. You could have traded up, whether you're a Fields guy or not, but would have reset the quarterback position and started over again. So there's some mistakes he's made. I think actually he's been really good. Just to kind of wrap up on Ron, he's been better here than I think I expected. And I also think that no matter what happens this season, whether he's back or not, we'll look back at Ron as probably the only guy that could have steered this ship through what would have become unimaginable waters. That you know what I mean? Like, you couldn't even write the story of all the craziness that happened as soon as Ron got here. So he gets a lot of credit from me no matter what happens. Let's move on to the game this evening. They played the Browns tonight at 7:30. It sounds like Coach said they'll play maximum starters of one quarter on offense. That could go down depending on how well they do. They can put a couple good drives together. How much would you like to see them play the starters on offense? And let me just say this before you do that. I heard a bunch of people yesterday in some of the spaces suggest that even if the starters go out after a series or two, that Sam should stay out there. So your thoughts on both. How long do you think they should play? And if the starters are out fairly quickly, should Hal stay in for more work?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really, really complicated for me because I think that some of these guys, or let's start off with the defense. The defense, I honestly, there's only a few guys I need to see. So, like, if I was like deciding on it, I probably wouldn't play a lot of them. Like, I do not need to see Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen. There's zero reason to see those guys. They've been through this before. They do not need the preseason. They'll get their play in the, in what's it called, the joint practices with the Ravens. It's basically the same thing. They don't need reps. Cam Curl, does he need reps? I don't think so. Kendall Fuller, probably not. Benjamin St. Juste at this point, this is what, his fourth year or third year. I don't think he needs it. And I mean, I would probably, not want him on the field as much as possible so he doesn't get hurt. We know like he is fragile, so probably don't need to see him on the field. And then Jamin Davis, I mean, maybe, and Cody Barton because he's learning the new defense. But so many of these guys, and Chase Young is one guy I do want to see a little bit just so we can get a little bit more of that rust off of him. But besides that, I don't need to see any of these guys play. I think they will, though, just out of respect for the Browns, because it's like, okay, you want to get the one-on-one, first team versus first team. So the coaches probably wouldn't be, Kevin Stefanski probably wouldn't be happy with Rivera if he's playing the twos and, he's playing the ones. But that's probably what I would do if I had the choice, but it's not going to happen. And then with the offense, I would honestly like them to play probably a full game in terms of not just this game, but through the whole preseason. I think a full game would be good. How I think today I would probably play them a half, play Brissett a quarter, and then from a quarter, that's not what's going to happen. They're going to play probably anywhere from like 3/4 of a quarter to a little over a quarter, that's what's going to happen. That's fine, but I do think this offense needs more reps. But the joint practice will be good because in the past they haven't had that, so that's definitely going to help. I think that putting Hal with the second team might not be the best idea, just because again, he's going to be going up against. I mean, he'll be going up against a second team, which might not be the best test for him, but at the same time, he'll have the second team with him. So if you want to play him a little bit, that's fine. But I think the first team offense needs work anyway. So I would just play him with that group, get him a half, because again, this is a new offense for basically everyone except for Charles Leno, who played under, EB's offense or Kansas City's offense in Chicago with Matt Nagy, and then Byron Pringle, Andrew Wiley, Derek Gore, and then Marcus Kemp. Everyone else learning a new offense. So they need all the reps. Howell needs the reps just in general because he's a young guy. So I would probably play him a half, but it's going to be a quarter.
I do find it interesting, Pedro, and I wonder if it affects. I guess I could reach out to a couple people, see if I could figure out the answer to this. But like, I wonder if it did. I wonder if they had not planned on playing the defensive starters this year, because to your point, and I think you're right on this, 90% of those guys have been in this defense going on year 4. So like, they don't need the work either. I want them healthy. Offense obviously needs tons of work. I guess the only reason I would play the ones a little bit more is I'd like to see guys like Diami Brown get in there and get some extra work, some Pringle get in some extra work. Like, to me, other than just the reps, I don't need to see Terry tonight. Sounds exactly. Like Logan will be out, which I think will be good for some of the young tight ends to get in and get some of that extra work. So yeah, I think if I were them, I'd be real careful, and particularly the notion of leaving Sam out there with the twos. Again, the conversation
with that second team offensive line.
And to me, that's the point. Never would I do that, because you couldn't even begin to name the second string offensive line. So I definitely wouldn't be leading my starter quarterback out there with those guys.
And sorry, real quick, their D line, at least their first team D line, is really good. You got Darius Smith, Myles Garrett, Shelby Harris. They probably got some other guys in there as well. One thing, this could be a good talking point. Diami Brown is going to be interesting. I think that I think he'll get some work with the first team, right? He'll probably get some work with the second team as well. But from camp, I've heard obviously we've heard a decent amount about Terry, but like the media is not going to talk as much about Terry because they already know, the fans know Terry's good. Jahan, they'll talk about him a little bit more because he's a young guy. So they've talked about him a decent amount. Diami, they've talked about it a lot this offseason. Like, he's making a lot of plays and stuff. Curtis, I've heard nothing. I've heard like maybe once every few days I'll hear a play. So I still think Curtis is the number 3 because, again, Diami hasn't shown anything really in this league before. I mean, he's shown a little bit, I guess, with some of the big plays, but consistency, he's shown nothing. So that's why I would still put Curtis over him because, again, Curtis, when he's healthy, he's getting you 750 receiving yards and 100 rushing yards and probably 5 touchdowns. But Diami, from what I've heard this offseason, how much he's done and how little Curtis has done, I could, maybe at some point this season, Diami overtakes Curtis. Like, that might be crazy. If you'd have told me that last season, I would be like, what? But that's something, I don't know, that could happen. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. And same thing goes with Pringle. I had assumed when they hired him, it was going to assign him, it's going to be a camp body, right? Just as somebody there to help because he knows the offense. Didn't realize quite how big he was. Didn't realize he kind of had those kind of wheels. So I definitely think he makes this team at least as wide receiver 5. I'm guessing they keep 6, but yeah, it's odd. It does not feel like this is the last year for Curtis Samuels in Washington, kind of any which way you look at it.
Yeah, and I think the ideal scenario would be, okay, I guess ideal scenario would be Diami goes insane this year, gets Diami's insane is 700 yards, 750 yards.
You're right.
But that would be the ideal scenario. But I think the realistic ideal scenario would be, okay, Curtis goes out there, gets you 600, but then Diami gets you 400 in not a ton of snaps. And you're like, okay, if he would have been the number 3, he probably gets you 600, 700. Let's say Curtis is out or Jahan's out for 2 games. And in those 2 games, he gets you 50 yards a game and a touchdown. Then you're okay, this guy, we don't need to re-sign Curtis. This guy can be our number 3. That's what I want to see from Diami Brown this year. okay, show me you can be a number 3 receiver in this league, because he hasn't shown that yet. But he also, like last year, I was disappointed with how he was used, because in that Titans game, he went off. And I think Jahan got hurt in that game or the next game. And I was like, okay, he just had a crazy game and Jahan got hurt. He's going to have a big opportunity here. And then he got no targets, which was like really frustrating to me. So, like, part of it, yes, is him, but part of it was, the quarterbacks and, the play calling last year. So this is the year for Diami. Like, this is really make or break for him, because if he has a big year, he's going to be here and he's going to be able to get an extension. If he has another 200-yard season or whatever, he's going to be like a back end of the roster guy. Like, he's going to be, battling to make rosters for the next few years if he doesn't, have a good year this year.
Well, particularly in a league that drafts, I mean, the new trend is just to draft wide receivers every year, right? Like, you can only afford to pay so many Terrys on your team. And now that the value wide receiver is getting into that 20 million a year range, you're going to have to be good at drafting receivers, and you're going to have to draft them every year, which is why when you get on the roster, when you get on the field, particularly as a wide receiver, you got to make an impact quickly. Easy enough for teams to move on and draft your replacement. Again, remember, Diami's what, 3rd or 4th round pick. So it's not like they have like that loyalty to them that they need him to work. They'll just move on. But I am glad to see he's having a good camp, because it was one of the guys that I always thought was a little intriguing with that speed and the fact they already have a little bit of history. Are there any, as we're getting here to kind of this time of the year where we start getting into surprise cuts, do you have any surprise commander cuts that you could see coming? Or maybe you got one or two that the other folk aren't necessarily seeing yet?
Oh, that's interesting. Like, honestly, I mean, I'm sure I could go through it. I don't know. Offensive line, there's just not good enough people to get cut. That would be
No, there's
surprised.
not.
Like, maybe Sadiq Charles, like, as a very, like, it would be a surprise cut, because, okay, like, he was contending.
Bigger surprise cut, Sadiq Charles or Logan Thomas?
Oh, Sadiq would be way more of a surprise. Or, sorry, Logan Thomas would be way more of a surprise cut. I don't think Logan gets cut. I would say, like, I would probably bet, like, not close to all my money, but a lot of money that Logan's making the team, because who they have behind him. Like, Cole Turner hasn't shown much. Bates is a good blocking tight end and occasionally can get you something. So
I like Bates's hands more than most. No, in that draft, Mel Kiper says John Bates has the second best hands of any tight end in that class outside of Pitts. He hadn't had the work. I'll say this real quick, not to cut you off and let you finish on Thomas, but because you brought up Bates, I'm telling you, I think there's a chance for him, just because of workload, as the best, but as you mentioned, and I agree, best blocking tight end on the team. They're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end for the running game. So just the sheer fact that he's going to be out there on, let's say, 60% of the plays, I could see him having a good year. And I don't even know what big year means for a tight end in Washington anymore, because we're very excited about Logan. You know what the highest number of yards Logan's had in a season here, right? It's like 600.
Yeah, it's like 600. Exactly. Bates, yeah, I think I like Bates. I mean, I have family in Oregon. He's from Oregon, so always like those guys. And Cole Turner's from Oregon as well, which is crazy. Both small cities in Oregon, I think, or they're from small cities in Oregon that I'm close to. But so shout out both those guys. But yeah, Cole Turner, he actually blocked a little bit better than I thought last year. So I think he's making the team. John Bates is making the team. I thought in his rookie year, he showed some promise as a receiving tight end, but they didn't really use him as much last year, partly because Logan was healthier. But I think Sadiq Charles would be a little bit of a surprise cut, just considering how little depth we have there. But I don't think he's getting cut. And besides that, like, I really don't see any. Like, our receiver, like, the only surprise, like Diami Brown, Curtis Samuel, those would be surprise cuts, but they're not getting cut.
Because Dax Milne wouldn't be a surprise, right?
Yeah, exactly. Running back, Gibson and Robinson, like Patterson, I know a lot of people love Patterson. He's getting cut, and that's not a surprise. And it just, unfortunate, because I think he's a little bit talented. Obviously, I don't think he's a number 1 or number 2, but this coaching staff, like, Rivera does not like him as a running back. Like, he played Reggie Bonifant over him last year in the final regular season game. He's listed
Right.
as the last running back on the depth chart. I know
Yeah.
it's a depth chart, whatever. Like who knows who makes it, but still. So he's not making it. But I think he gets a little disrespected. I think he'll be able to get back on the practice squad here. But if I were him, I would go somewhere else, get a chance. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. I mean, maybe okay. This is one that actually could be a surprise cut because he was a draft pick. I don't think he will get cut, but again, it's a surprise. KJ Henry. I've heard some good things about Andre Jones this camp, and if you think about it, they've got the 4 start. They usually keep what 10 D linemen. They've got 4 as a starters. And then, I mean, John Ridgeway, Fedarian Mathis, Casey Tula, James Smith-Williams. That's 8 right there. Those are, I think, all locks. And then you got F.A. Obata, who I think will make it. He's, been with Rivera before, played solid last year, plays on special teams. That's 9. And the 10th is either Andre Jones or KJ Henry. The media seems to say like Andre Jones has shown a little bit more. So I would, that would be the surprise cut for me. Don't think it'll happen. I still think, it looks bad if you're cutting a 5th round pick. It looks pretty bad. Actually, really bad. If you're cutting a 5th round pick, it looks pretty bad. So I don't think they'll do that. But that would be my surprise cut, actually.
In fact, it's crazy this year, right? And I'm not sure whether this is like Ron Rivera, the crazy man, or Ron Rivera, like the true to form professional, picking who he thinks is right. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th round pick for this year aren't going to play unless something drastic happens. And it was never the plan for them to play. Ricky Strong, Braden Daniels, and KJ Henry, none of them are going to see the field this year, which feels kind of crazy for a guy that needs to win right now.
Exactly.
3rd, 4th, 5th round picks need at least a little work.
And the craziest part is the 2nd round pick isn't going to start, which to me, I was thinking about it today. I think I was listening to Kind podcast and they were just discussing everything. And I was just like, okay, I really like Quan Martin. I think he's going to be a good player, but it almost seems like a wasted pick because it's like we have like our secondary right now, Emmanuel Forbes. You just drafted him in the 1st round. He better be good. You got Kendall Fuller, who's a good corner in this league. Is he elite? I don't think so, but he's a good corner. Benjamin St-Juste, when he's healthy, I think he has a chance to be a really solid, maybe even like Pro Bowl corner. Then
who starts outside opposite Emmanuel Forbes this year?
I think they'll go Kendall Fuller and then start St-Juste in the slot. That's what they've been doing. I don't know though. It's right. Kind of crazy. And they also got Percy Butler, Derek Forson, and Cam Curl. So this secondary is extremely talented. They did not need Quan Martin. It felt like another luxury pick, just like Fedarian Mathis, which at the time I absolutely hated it. And hey, he might be a good player. Haven't heard great things this offseason. He might be a good player. Let's just keep it real. That's not a great pick. Like the amount of players we could have used in the 2nd round, like offensive linemen. If we drafted a guy in the 2nd round last year, he could be at this point a good starter in this league. Let's say at left guard. And we would be feeling a lot better about offensive line because this is something I guess I've became aware of, again, developing as a football fan. But as, a D lineman, if you have one good D lineman or one elite D lineman, a good D lineman, and 2 not so great D linemen, hey, that's fine. Because if one of them gets there, you're golden. And then you have a good guy. If the other guy gets double teamed, you're fine. O-line, you can have 3 elite guys, 1 okay guy, and a terrible guy. Well, they'll just attack that guy, and you're effed. So it's just like we have one of those guys at left guard where it could be really ugly this year. It could be really ugly depending on how I'm not predicting that, but it could be. So I just don't, it would have been better in my opinion if not this past year, but the year before we drafted offensive lineman in the 2nd round. There are still some good ones, even this year, honestly, instead of Quan Martin. I think Quan Martin's going to be a really good player. I just think it's a luxury because we got if we wouldn't have drafted him, we still would have been fighting to put these guys in like Percy Butler. Where is he going to play? Now Quan Martin in there too. It's just so hard, but it is what it is. It's like you said, it's very weird for Rivera to, in a year he needs to win. He'll have Emmanuel Forbes as an impact player, Quan Martin as a contributor probably, and then besides that, Probably
That's
no
it.
one.
That's it. Yeah.
Maybe KJ Henry if some injuries happen at the D
Uh-huh.
line, and then yeah, that's it. Braden Daniels is not playing. Ricky
No.
Stromberg probably not playing. So you're right. It's very weird for Rivera and a pretty much a must-win year for him.
And it's odd because they see it differently, I guess, than I do, and that's fine. They certainly know more football than I do. I won't argue them that point. But to me, St. Juice is not a nickel corner. I to me, he's one of those guys that needs the boundary. When they switch to that kind of match cover zone deal, that worked in his favor. So he's looking forward. I just don't think he's shifty enough to work in the middle of the field, which is why I remember talking to my brother on draft day. As soon as they drafted Emmanuel Forbes, well, they've got to draft a nickel because in my mind, they don't have a pure nickel on the team. I actually thought they were going to draft Brian Branch, who got drafted one pick before out of Alabama. They like Quan's athletic profile and think he shows a higher range with the Raz or whatever. But yeah, no, as soon as they did, I said, man, they got to draft a nickel because I didn't think they really had one. Fuller was horrible in the nickel last year for whatever reason. Much better when they got him out to the boundary halfway through the season.
Did he play? Was it last year or the year before when he played in the slot? I thought that was the year before because didn't Benjamin St. Juice start in the slot last year, and then it was Fuller and Jackson on the outside. That's what I thought. And then I think the year before, I think he played
Was
in
it the
this
year before? I thought it was last year when they had. I thought last year they had
because
it. I didn't think they got Kendall outside
didn't
until
St.
they
Juice still play in the
released
slot at some point? And I
William
thought it was last.
Jackson.
Didn't Benjamin St. Juice play in the slot at some point? I thought he did.
I know he puts work in the slot, St. Juice, and they like him there. I don't prefer him there, but because and that's why I thought they drafted Martin right away was because they really don't have an answer inside. But the point is, there's probably going to be two guys playing inside a
Yeah.
lot if they're using a big dime formation, which it sounds like it will. Let me get you out of here on this one, Pedro. The line this year for the Commanders is set at 6.5 wins. I would assume you're taking the over on that. What is the number that you like for this year?
Yeah, I'll definitely go over for that. It's just like every year I usually go one win over is what I do. Except for the Rivera first year, I went 7 and I predicted 7-9. They went 7-9. The next year, they ended up winning 7 games. I think I predicted 9. So it's 2 off. Last year, I think I predicted 9 or 10. I think it was 9 and I was 1 off. So I'm always a little too optimistic. I'm gonna like I always say it, like optimistically, I'm going 9. I think the safe pick is 8 because if you go 8, and that's probably what I'll end up doing is 8. Like I don't think I think the max you could go you could be off is 2 games if you go 8 because I don't think they're losing. I don't think
Right.
they're winning less than 6 games. It's really hard for that to happen. It just unless it's really ugly early on and then Rivera gets fired and Harris is kind of moving people around, telling the front office to move players out,
Yeah.
trying to tank. That's the only scenario I see them winning 5 or less games. But in the opposite, I don't see them winning more than 10. Like unless unless Sam Howell is an average starting quarterback in this league. Because hey, like people are, being like, oh, we need Sam Howell to be elite. No, we do not.
No, we
If
don't.
we get a below average quarterback, that's the crazy thing. If we get below average QB play, it's way better than what we've had the last few years. We've had Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, Case Keenum, Colt McCoy, rest in peace,
You know
Dwayne
how many
Haskins.
times? You know how many points this team averaged last year?
What was it? 19? I don't know.
Like 18.9.
Yes, it's just like
How they got
it's
to 8 wins, not averaging 20 points a game, still beyond me. I have no idea.
exactly. So with Hal, if he's like the 23rd ranked quarterback in the league, is that great? No, that's better than what we've had, and we're also paying him what $600K. I don't know the exact number, but it's way less than $28 million. So, and then you got the insurance with Jacoby Brissett as the backup, who can get you, I think, to 8-9 wins as well. This defense is way too good to win, fewer than 6 games. Again, The Jets had probably the worst quarterback play last year with Zach Wilson, or one of the worst, but they still won what, 7 or 8 games. And again, we're in this similar situation. I think we probably have a better defense than them. It's debatable, but they've got a really good defense. We've got a really good defense. We've got good, solid running backs. We've got some good, really good receivers. And then, O-line's questionable. That's the biggest thing. O-line is a question mark. And then in turn, that could cause, some damage to Sam Howell, which you really don't want. So my biggest concern this year is the offensive line. Because again, I think you got best case scenario, you got 2 above average players on that offensive line. I think Nick Gates is probably an average center at best, probably will be a little bit below average, which is fine considering we've been playing third and fourth stringers, but he also has been dealing with he's dealt with some injuries. And then at left tackle, I think Leno at best, again, is an average tackle. I think he's, sorry, last year he was probably, below average. The year before he was, average, maybe a little bit above average. So I think, if he has a really good season, he's average, maybe a little bit above average. I think Wiley has the chance to be a little bit above average. We'll see. Cosme is the guy I am excited for. I think he can be a really good guard in this league. I think he can be a Pro Bowl type guard. I do not know what happened last year. I really don't know because he started right tackle, wasn't great. He got hurt in the second game of the season.
Yeah.
So you had no way of saying, if he was playing great or not, because it's 1 or 2 games. Everyone has 1 or 2 bad games or good games. So he gets hurt, and then he's out for 4 or 5 weeks, and then they have him active, but they're like, okay, for 2 weeks, it's like he'll only play if it's an emergency. And then he finally was rotating in and out with Lucas for a few weeks, but they said
I've never seen that before in my life.
Yeah, and they said he still hadn't had feeling in some of his fingers. So I don't know when he got the feeling back, but it was just if he did have the feeling back and they were playing Lucas over him, for me, that was ridiculous because Lucas wasn't playing well. I don't know what's happening last year. I don't think we'll ever know, but I'm excited about Cosme. Super athletic, big guy, will be good in space for the screen game with Bieniemy. So I think I'm excited about Cosme. I think he has a chance to be a really good guard in this league. And I think after this year, he might be the only guy where we're like, okay, we're set at this spot.
Right.
Every other spot, maybe besides Wiley, because he's kind of in the Leno situation where he's a little bit older, but he has under contract for a few more years. But every other spot, like Nick Gates, he's the placeholder, hopefully for Ricky Stromberg. But this offensive line needs an overhaul. They need more depth. That's the biggest concern for me this season. But I'll go 8 wins, maybe 9 if I'm optimistic. How about you?
Well, we're going to do the season in a preview show in a couple of weeks now.
But you're around there.
I'll save mine for that. But the guy the other day was trying to talk me into 11. I don't see 11. Frankly, I have a hard time. I've looked at that schedule a couple times. I have a hard time getting to 9.
Yeah, and real quick,
there are some in there, if they can pull the Broncos game, if they can win in Seattle, if the Rams aren't as good, something like that. They've got to split all the games in the division. I always kind of do that anyway, just because who knows and everything's wacky. But there's some games in there that they can win. There's some games in there they have to win or they got no chance of getting anywhere close to 9.
Yeah, and last thing that I was going to say is that I think this team right here with last year's schedule and, this year's coaching staff, I think they win 10, maybe 11 games because the last year's schedule is easier. They also had a ton of close games that I think with this, defense is going to be a little bit better. And then the offense that I hope is going to be better with the quarterback play. They probably win one of those Giants games, maybe that Titans game, maybe another game as well. And maybe they lose another game as well that Heineke just went crazy in. But obviously, they're still winning that Bears game with Hal because
they have to.
They have to
win it this year.
They have to win it this year. The Colts game, they're still a lot of those games are still winning it. And yeah, that Thursday night game, they got to win it. I'm probably going. That should be a good game. Yeah. Thursday night football, right? Thursday night, right?
Yeah.
Of course, the 2 primetime games we get is Bears. I guess we got the Eagles one last year, but back-to-back years playing the Bears on primetime. I'm sure America is not happy about that, but it is what it is.
What anything new for the channel this year? I know everybody is always trying to update and refresh, do you have anything new coming up on the channel we should know about?
I mean, I've got some like brand deals going on that like I will be able to do a giveaway at some point where I'll probably be giving away some jerseys and maybe some tickets. So stay tuned for that. You know, it'll be, yeah, just stay tuned for that. Join. It should be good. You know, whatever jersey you want from the Commanders, Redskins football team, whatever it is, it should be a fun thing there. Maybe some tickets to a game, and you got a Discord server as well. Trying to get that up and running a little bit. But yeah, just besides that, doing the same stuff, previews, post game reactions, live streams, and injury reports. That's what I'll be doing for this season. And then obviously the off seasons when you got to get creative. But once you get to this point of the season, it's like, okay, training camp updates, discussions, injuries, and then preseason. And now you don't really have to think about it too much, which is good.
You going to the opener?
Not able to go to the opener just because I will be down in Blacksburg, which is 5 hours. I don't even know how long. I mean, it's 4.5 hours from DC, but
who's playing that day?
Yeah, so I'll probably be able to, especially since it's Sunday game, it's hard to do. But the Thursday night game against the Bears, I think we have a fall break, so we have Friday off. So I'll be able to go back home on like Wednesday or Thursday and then stay until Sunday. So that'll be a good game to go to. I haven't been to a game in a while because it's like a lot of the times, like I honestly rather just watch at home. But the Thursday night primetime game, I'll be excited to watch that there, hopefully. And they better get the win. They better get the win.
No doubt. All right, buddy. Appreciate it, man. Had a good time today. This was great.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.